The United States in 1988 was in a delicate dance between eras. The Cold War, though thawing, still hovered in every news broadcast. The digital age was creeping forward, yet coins clinked in pockets and vending machines with a reliability born of habit. At the U.S. Mint, tradition still guided the presses. The 5-cent coin, more affectionately known as the nickel, bore the stately visage of Thomas Jefferson, unflinching, constant, a presence nearly as old as the coinage itself. The reverse, Monticello, stood serene and symmetrical as it had since 1938. That year, production at the Denver Mint moved steadily, churning out tens of millions of nickels. The die's mechanical workhorses engraved with the coin's design pressed blank planchets into circulation-ready nickels. Quality control was tight, but not infallible. Among the monotonous clatter and hiss of the automated process, one coin, then another, and perhaps a few more, were minted with an imperfection so quiet, so concealed, that it would take over a decade to even raise an eyebrow. The mistake didn't scream. It whispered. And for years, it whispered unnoticed. In 2002, nearly 14 years after the last Reagan-era nickel was struck, a collector from Omaha named Paul Renslow was sorting through a hoard of coins he'd purchased from a retired coin dealer's estate. The dealer had been methodical, almost obsessively so, everything labeled, cataloged, placed in plastic sleeves. Most of the coins were common. Wheat pennies, Roosevelt dimes, statehood quarters still in their mint rolls. But then, Paul opened a thin envelope marked simply, "Nickels, odd reverse?" Inside was a single 1988 5-cent coin. It gleamed only faintly under his desk lamp, worn from years of circulation. He almost passed it over. But a quick look at the reverse gave him pause. Monticello seemed off. Not entirely misaligned, not doubled in the traditional sense, but distorted. Paul turned the coin in the light. It wasn't the building's symmetry that was troubling him, it was the steps. Or rather, the ghost of them. Where Monticello's steps should have been sharp, they appeared muddled, ill-defined. And around the left base, a faint arc curved out a shape he couldn't place. He blinked, leaned closer. There, tucked into the curvature of Monticello's base, was a shadowy figure that had no place on a nickel. A ridge. Raised. Unintended. He compared it with other 1988 nickels. They all bore clear, traditional reverses. But this one had a flaw, and not one caused by circulation wear. This imperfection had been struck in metal from the very beginning. Paul began researching. Error coin communities were growing in the early 2000s, with online forums buzzing in pockets of numismatic excitement. He posted photos. Feedback was cautious. Some suspected die deterioration. Others speculated machine doubling. A few suggested it could be a clash die when a die strikes another die without a planchet between them, causing ghost-like impressions of one side's design to transfer to the other. He submitted the coin to an error specialist. The verdict: a reverse die clash with a rotated obverse transfer. Rare, odd, and most importantly unique. What Paul had was a clash that imprinted a faint outline of Jefferson's profile, backwards, into the reverse of the coin, specifically into the Monticello design. Jefferson's nose, cheekbone, and the trace of his collar curved into the base like a phantom, subtle but unmistakable under magnification. That's when the value question began to mutate. Initially, it was more of an oddity than a treasure. Error collectors love a story, and this one offered mystery. Paul turned down a $400 offer from a West Coast dealer. Then another collector from New Jersey offered $750. Still, Paul hesitated. It wasn't about the money, not yet. It was about the nature of the error. How many more could be out there? And then, in 2005, a second coin appeared. A collector at a Michigan flea market found it in a bargain box. Unmarked, unappreciated. He'd bought it for $0.25. When the coin was posted online, side by side with Paul's specimen, the similarities were eerie. Identical clash marks. Same rotation. Same trace of Jefferson's ghost lingering under Monticello. It wasn't a fluke anymore. It was a pattern. With 2 confirmed examples, grading services took notice. PCGS designated it as a 1988 D5-cent reverse die clash error Jefferson transfer. The label made waves in coin circles. Soon, small groups began combing through 1988 D nickels with magnifiers, flashlights, and even microscopes. More surfaced, but barely. Over the next 10 years, just 5 additional examples were authenticated. Each carried slightly different degrees of clarity, but the die markers, die polishing lines, the arc of Jefferson's image confirmed their relationship. Prices surged. In 2012, an MS-63 example with strong clash visibility sold at auction FO. The coin had been pulled from a roll in Colorado and kept in near uncirculated condition. A year later, another with heavier wear but clearer Jefferson profile sold privately for $4,200. Collectors weren't just buying a coin, they were buying the narrative. The accident. The rarity. The idea that a ghostly president had etched himself not just into the coin's obverse, but into its reverse too. But even as the value climbed, something was missing. A twist that arrived, as they often do, by accident. In 2017, a researcher compiling a digital archive of die clashes across denominations noticed something odd about the 1988 D Jefferson transfer specimens. Each clash occurred in a very narrow range of production. All bore the same secondary indicators: a tiny die crack across Monticello's right pediment, a polishing scar behind Jefferson's head on the obverse, and most interestingly a barely visible mint mark anomaly. That anomaly, a tilted D with a shallow doubling on its southern point, had gone unnoticed. No previous mint documentation had recorded such a die. But in all 7 known clash coins, the D was identical. The implications were clear. All 7 coins had originated from the same pair of dies. A single clash event. A singular moment in mint history. One press. One malfunction. One fleeting mistake immortalized in fewer than a dozen coins. This revelation changed everything. What had been a curious clash coin suddenly became a catalogued event. Numismatists coined it the 1988 D Jefferson Phantom Clash, classifying it as one of the rarest 5-cent die clashes ever documented with only 7 authenticated specimens as of 2023. Paul still owned the original. He received regular offers, some topping $10,000, but he declined. For him, it had never been about the sale. It was the thrill of finding something overlooked by millions. A whisper of history, hidden in nickel alloy. But the story didn't end there. In late 2023, a numismatic researcher revisiting the mint's public die logs uncovered something even more startling. A note scribbled in a Denver Mint operator's report dated February 8, 1988, mentioned a press halt for unexpected double strike contact on the 5-cent line. No coins were reportedly damaged, and the die was polished and returned to production. No coins were reportedly damaged. That line, so seemingly routine, now dripped with irony. This meant the clash wasn't just a possibility, it was logged. Though the mint never acknowledged any coins entering circulation, the phantom lived on in at least 7 survivors. The most recent sale, January 2024, of a verified MS-64 Jefferson Phantom Clash fetched $13,750 at a public auction, with bidders from 3 continents vying for the coin. Its appeal had spread beyond American collectors. The coin became symbolic, a moment of failure creating a monument of rarity. The physical error itself remains haunting. Jefferson's silhouette embedded where no face should exist, ghosting into Monticello's steps like a relic of a dream. The clash lines wrap into the structure, merging architecture with anatomy. It's not garish. It doesn't scream like a dramatic off-center strike. It beckons the observer to look closer, to question the story behind the metal. What lingers is the idea that, in the most mundane of objects, brilliance hides. The 1988 nickel was never supposed to be special. It wasn't a commemorative issue. It wasn't struck in silver or gold. It was common, born from routine. And yet, in a sliver of misalignment, a brief collision between two dies created something nearly impossible to replicate. How many more of these phantom clashes are out there, unrecognized? Sitting in drawers, tucked into coin jars, resting at the bottom of old vending machines? Each one a secret waiting to surface. And still, somewhere in circulation, perhaps one more waits its silent echo of Jefferson caught in Monticello's shadow, ready to surprise the world again. In the hum of automated presses and the relentless rhythm of metal striking dies, the U.S. Mint continued its unwavering duty in 2018, producing coins that would jingle through millions of pockets and drawers. That year, nestled in the ongoing tradition of American currency, the familiar 5-cent coin, known affectionately as the Jefferson Nickel, was again struck in great numbers. With over 1 billion nickels minted across Philadelphia and Denver combined, there seemed little reason to imagine any deviation from the norm. Thomas Jefferson's stately profile, the Monticello on the reverse, the iconic mottos, and clean borders, everything was in place, as it had been for decades. But somewhere amid the vastness of that year's production, in a moment as brief as a blink and as significant as a fault line under pressure, something went wrong. Or perhaps something extraordinary took place. The machines did not pause. They never do. A die misaligned, perhaps tilted just slightly, imperceptibly at first, began to leave its flawed mark on a series of coins. Not all at once, not dramatically, but enough to create an anomaly so subtle it could be easily overlooked by thousands. For a time, it was miles away, and months later, in a small collector's den cluttered with magnifying glasses, soft cotton gloves, and albums thick with years of accumulation, a man named Daniel Wexley opened a bankroll of nickels. A lifelong hobbyist with an eye for anomalies, Daniel wasn't searching for treasure, just the comfort of pattern, the rhythm of dates and landmarks, the kind of activity that soothes the mind after a long day. But on that particular evening, the rhythm was broken. At first, it was just a shadow, a glint that didn't belong. The nickel dated 2018 slipped under his loupe, and something odd emerged. Jefferson's face, usually crisp and forward-facing with meticulous symmetry, seemed distorted. Not blurred, not worn, but stretched. Pulled, almost. The letters, "In God We Trust," were present but irregular, as though fighting to anchor themselves on a shifting plane. The Monticello on the reverse seemed fine at a glance, but closer inspection revealed an echo effect. A doubling, no, a misalignment. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He compared it to others from the same roll. One after another, normal, typical, mundane. Only one bore this distortion. This displacement. He checked again. And again. He noted the edges, the weight, the composition. Everything checked out. No evidence of tampering. It had the feel of something real, something missed by the Mint's rigid quality control. The next morning was a frenzy of research. Hours scouring forums, emailing contacts, comparing known errors from past years. The possibilities narrowed. A die clash? No, the features weren't ghostly or raised in the wrong direction. A misaligned die? Possibly. But this had a more jagged, unbalanced aesthetic. Like a tilted world just slightly off-kilter, Daniel sent high-resolution photos to a friend, another numismatist in California, who responded with a single line. "I think you found something no one's cataloged yet." As whispers of the find began to move through online coin communities, skepticism followed. Claims of Photoshop, manipulations, wishful thinking. But in time, the images were verified. Third-party grading companies, intrigued by the buzz, examined the coin in person. What they found confirmed the suspicions. It was indeed a genuine 2018 Jefferson Nickel, struck with a misaligned die, resulting in dramatic off-center features on the obverse and subtle doubling on the reverse. An error rare not just in its physicality, but in its survival. It had made it through mint packaging, shipment, distribution, and handling, only to land in a collector's roll. The community christened it the 2018 D-Tilted Portrait Nickel. Soon after, another surfaced. Then another. But never many. Fewer than a dozen, each with slightly varying degrees of distortion. Enough to prove it wasn't a one-off anomaly, but few enough to drive curiosity into obsession. The coin began to fetch modest premiums, at first $10, then $30, then a surprising $75 in an online auction. Graded specimens, especially those in mint state with the error clearly visible, soared past the $100 mark. Yet none dared to guess where the ceiling might lie. The mystery deepened when one example appeared with an entirely different quirk. Not only was Jefferson's face distorted, but the reverse bore a faint, almost spectral ring and incuse outline where Monticello's dome should have been. A ghost image, but unlike any classic die clash. It was as though the dome had been stamped onto the coin from another dimension, present but not present. X-rays and surface scans revealed a faint double impression, possibly the result of a die shift between strikes, creating a rare shadow layer. Numismatists were puzzled. Grading services added a new descriptor for it. 2018 D Shadow Monticello variant. That coin alone graded MS66 with full steps, and the shadow visible under magnification sold privately for $2,400. The buyer was anonymous. The seller was not. And suddenly, what began as a quiet discovery in a coin roll became the center of an escalating market frenzy. Stories emerged of treasure hunters combing through hundreds of 2018 rolls from Denver, fingers raw from the constant coin flipping, eyes strained from microscopic examination. Pawn shops and estate sales received unexpected visits from collectors looking only for one coin, dated 1 year, bearing one mint mark. The 2018 D Jefferson Nickel, once a forgettable piece of pocket change, became a legend in the making. Even among experts, the consensus was elusive. Some argued it was the result of a late-stage die rotation error, possibly triggered by stress in the collar. Others proposed a hypothesis involving temperature fluctuations at the mint facility causing the die seating to slip intermittently, a rare, but not impossible condition. But one aspect remained undisputed. The error's aesthetics were compelling. The coin didn't look broken. It looked intentional, like a modern artist's rendering of a classical portrait off balance, but deliberate. In auctions, the numbers began to climb. $1, $200, $1, $800, $2, $600. An MS67 brought $4,500 in early 2022, only to be surpassed 6 months later by an uncirculated Shadow Monticello variant in pristine MS68, which stunned the community when the final hammer struck at $7, $200. But then, something unexpected happened. A collector in Pennsylvania, known for cataloging known errors across decades, noticed a peculiar pattern. In 3 different examples, all high grade, all with a distinctive obverse tilt, the reverse Monticello had minute differences. Not just in alignment or doubling. In design, one had an extra window, another, slightly elongated steps, and the third, most curious of all, showed a faint outline on the rightmost column, resembling a vertical inscription. A feature that was not part of the design. At first, it was dismissed as pareidolia. Coin collectors see faces in corrosion, after all. But high magnification imaging proved otherwise. The column bore microscopic engravings not visible to the naked eye. A string of letters, reversed, as if impressed from another coin during a rare die contamination event. The reversed letters spelled E3B. No one could explain it. Theories flooded in. A misfed planchet from a trial strike? A recycled die component? An unauthorized test run using experimental dies? The mint refused to comment directly, but acknowledged the pattern was not consistent with normal production parameters. Collectors were baffled. Dealers were intrigued. Prices rose again. The E3B variant, as it became unofficially known, is today considered the pinnacle of the 2018 D error series. Only one such coin has been authenticated with the inscription visible. Its last known public valuation, unconfirmed, whispered in numismatic circles, pegged it north of $18,000. A coin worth 5 cents, reborn through error, mystery, and scarcity into a modern grail. But the story doesn't end with the E3B. Because just recently, in a routine grading submission of 2018 nickels from a collector in Oregon, another oddity emerged. This coin bore all the hallmarks of the error, the tilted portrait, the off-center motto, but the metal itself was wrong. Testing revealed a composition not matching standard nickel-copper alloy. Instead, it leaned closer to the 25% nickel/75% copper clad used in dimes and quarters. A blank intended for another denomination, mistakenly struck with a Jefferson Nickel die. A 5-cent coin on a 10-cent blank. A wrong planchet error layered atop the already rare die misalignment. And it wasn't a one-off. Two more surfaced, each carrying the weight of multiple anomalies. Theories abound that a small batch of misplaced blanks were processed unknowingly during the brief window in which the tilted die was active. These hybrid anomalies, dubbed the 2018 D Phantom Planchets, are now fetching offers north of $12,000 even in lower grades. In pristine condition, experts speculate they may shatter price records for modern U.S. Mint errors. The ripple effect continues. What was once a standard coin year, overlooked by many, is now a focal point for discovery and fascination. Every new find seems to reshape the story, deepen the mystery, and entice the hopeful to re-examine their change jar, their old rolls, their forgotten drawers. Some say the 2018 D series will fade in time, a curiosity eclipsed by newer errors. But others believe we've only scratched the surface of what the year holds. That somewhere, perhaps in the unopened box at a bank or a dusty corner of a thrift shop, lies the next twist. Because in the world of coins, perfection is common. But imperfection, beautiful, mysterious imperfection, is where the legends live.